Thank you for being here today. I want to open the Agency Operations Committee meeting, and we'll go ahead and get right to the agenda. Approval of the minutes of the October 27, 2010 committee meeting will be our first action item on the agenda, is approval of the meetings. So are there any questions or corrections?
Move to approve.
Harold, motion. Second. There's only three of us here, so it's
Second.
all in favor. Aye. No opposed. Next, we will have the Deputy Commissioner's report. For agenda item number 3, I'd like to call Dr. Arturo Alonso to introduce the topics for this meeting's report. He will give us some background information, and these items require no action. Dr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get to the reports that are listed on the agenda, I would like to take a couple of minutes to introduce one of our newest members of my staff. Sid, would you please come up to the AOC? Most of you know that Garlafent retired in June as Assistant Commissioner for IT Services. And we have replaced Darla with Sid Hodgson, who is our new Assistant Commissioner for IT Services. Sid joined the agency on December 1st. He brings a wealth of experience in managing IT projects, has worked on with many companies at a multinational level, has some state experience coming to us most recently from TxDOT. We are very pleased to have a person of his caliber leading our IT efforts, especially given the current budget challenges that we are facing as of about a week ago. And just want to take this opportunity to introduce him to the committee. Sid.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here. It's certainly a lot of challenges and opportunities that I've identified over the first almost 2 months here, and I'm really excited about the opportunity and the challenges ahead of us. I think I have a good team. It's not to say we can improve in a lot of areas, but I'm optimistic that we can do some good things for the agency and for the taxpayers of Texas.
Great. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sid. The first report is listed on the agenda item. I'd like to call on Mr. Dan Griffith, Director of ARA Programs, for an update on our ARA initiatives. Dan?
Good afternoon, Chairman Hall and members of the committee. I'm Dan Griffiths, Director of the Government Services Stimulus Program here at the Coordinating Board. We appreciate the opportunity to report on the status of the Department of Education Grants Program and have accomplished several milestones this prior quarter, which are presented as bullets in your single-page report that you have in front of you. As we proceed with reimbursing our subrecipients, who are universities, community colleges, and state agencies, we are closing out those projects who have spent down their funds. As of the end of December, we have closed out 95 projects with a total value of $121 million. Out of the $121 million in reimbursements, only $28.58 was left unspent. The Coordinating Board's Government Services Program was cited by the Governor's Office for best practices in monitoring and our web-based reporting site. In the interest of transparency, we have posted all monitoring plans and reports on our ARA webpage. And in December, we presented a functional demonstration of our SharePoint site to both the Governor's Office, the Department of Public Safety, and the Comptroller's Office. With over 100 monitoring projects scheduled for the period of October through May, we have completed a third of those planned desk reviews, on-site monitoring activities, and program reviews that were assessed of projects that were assessed to be of higher risk to the agency and to the project, and to monitor their spending as we approach the 75% schedule milestone in March. KPMG is scheduled to complete its A133 audit of the ARA Grants program in February, and we are working with them and our internal audit department to complete all test work and action items. For this quarter, we are forecasting approximately $50 million in expenditures, and will continue our monitoring and reporting activities as previously mentioned. You will note our status matrix at the bottom of the report for data as of the end of December, which reflects the GSF program as being 86% spent, and with approximately $100 million left until the end of the program in September. Attached to this status report is a chart that we provided a copy to you as well, which shows our planned versus actual spending. That's program-wide. We're slightly ahead of schedule in that area, and we'll be gradually shifting our team's primary focus from reimbursement processing to meet the increase in scheduled monitoring activities throughout the program. As a matter of note, the U.S. Department of Education has scheduled their on-site monitoring of the SFSF program here at the Coordinating Board for July of 2011. We keep our ERA website updated monthly to maintain high levels of accountability and transparency as required by the Recovery Act and the Coordinating Board and Governor's Office. And I'm available at any time to answer your questions or provide additional information that you might need. I'd like to take any questions at this time from the committee.
What are we going to do with that $28.50?
That's probably a question for the legislature.
Good answer.
Good response, yeah. I thought you'd say I'm going to buy a decent bottle of wine.
I don't know if that'd be an allowable expense under this program, Commissioner.
Can we transfer it to the rainy day fund?
That, too, would be a question for the legislature, I'm afraid. We're just glad that through our encouragement, our facilitation, working with these subrecipients, that they're spending these funds under the intent of the stimulus program, the Recovery Act. We do periodic surveys, and now have increased those to every 2 months just to make sure that their spending is on track and that nobody's falling behind. If they do have any issues or questions as far as allocating dollars and so forth to their various programs and schools, then we're here to help them and provide technical assistance and any kind of recommendations that they need to be successful.
There are no questions.
All right.
Many thanks.
Thanks
Great
again for
job.
your support. I appreciate it.
The next report is, as listed under item B, is the quarterly or the financial report that I provide to this board or to this committee at every meeting. And there's a copy, a hard copy at your places. Earlier last week, I believe it was, I also sent you an electronic copy for your review in case you had a chance to do so. I'm going to very briefly, I'm not going to walk through all the pages of the report, but as usual, just kind of hit the highlights. This is the report in the format that we have been using for some time now. We break it up into several parts. Number one, the operating accounts of the agency. Secondly, the trustee funds and the status of those funds. We outline in detail the adjustments that we've made to our books. The auditor report, which is pretty much what Dan just reported on. And then lastly, the loan funds and the debt summary that Dan Weaver handles for us in the agency. We include for you both summary and detailed information on the budgeted to actual expenditures. This report reflects any adjustments that have been made for carryover funds and has the actual carryovers that were based upon year-end closeout. The budgets are managed by the assistant commissioners in the respective divisions at the appropriation level, that is to say, at the strategy level. So sometimes you will see in some of those strategies that a line item, for example, may be overspent or underspent, but it is at the strategy level that we manage. This funds, the reports that you see here, has both expended and encumbered funds, and I want to point out that it has been our policy and continues to be our policy to encumber funds when a contract is fully executed. That prevents a lot of adjustments on encumbering funds prematurely. And so when a contract comes to us, it's fully executed, that's when it hit our books as an encumbrance. I use this report, obviously, to report to the board, but it is a good management tool. I ask a lot of questions. The staff briefs me on it prior to bringing it to the board, and so we think that it presents a good picture of our finances. I will be glad to answer any specific questions or respond to any particular concerns on the financial report.
My only general question, and I didn't see anything that jumped out to me, is whether there are any categories at the strategy level or otherwise where you're concerned that the pace of spending has exceeded what was planned year to date.
There are not, Fred. In fact, like I said, I work very closely with, and my staff works very closely with the division heads to ensure that they are on track and that, that we neither overspend nor underspend. If there are no further questions, then I will go to the next item, which is a report on an update on the facilities. The construction and the building continues, progress continues towards getting this building renovated. We have almost completed phase 2, which is the first floor, the renovation of our new boardroom, our new meeting rooms. We are working to make sure that as we get into the second floor renovation, which will be the next phase, mainly the offices on the second floor, that we try to keep the disruption to a minimum, especially as we go into the session. We are still anticipating a completion date of late April for final completion and final walkthrough. And I'd just like to say that in case you are sentimentally attached to this boardroom, this will be the last time that you will be meeting here, because the next meeting will be in our new boardrooms on the first floor. So I will be glad to answer any questions on our renovation.
I forgot, were we going to do a walkthrough, or we can do it after the meeting for those that want to?
Well, it's certainly available, Wallace, but yeah, it's a hard hat area that's real dusty, it's real, so I'm not sure that there's a lot to be seen. I'd rather show you, I mean, you're certainly welcome, but I'd rather show you when your new places are in place, when your new workspaces in place.
I'd kind of like to see you wearing a hard hat.
I wear a hard hat. Got my steel toe boots on too.
Arturo, who gets to move and rehang all the portraits of our
Esteemed.
prior distinguished chairs right through that guy over there next to the clock?
I think Judy Schoolings has volunteered for that.
Will they be moving down with us to
Yes. I don't know. I haven't gotten into the interior decoration part, Fred, but I don't know.
I just wanted to know if I'd had time to put a mustache on that last color.
Okay, item D is a brief report on our process, on our attempt, on our progress towards implementing some lean processes. I reported on this at the last meeting. Since then, we issued the RFP. We have received 7 proposals were submitted. We are right now in the midst of evaluating both the technical and the cost evaluations. We put together a team within the agency led by Dan Griffith, as I mentioned last time. We are making sure that we evaluate the proposals in a fair and thorough manner to go to contract, and our expectations are early February. If you recall, this is a RFP to have somebody come in here and, number one, introduce the concepts of lean processes to the agency, whether it would be Six Sigma or Kaizen or others. We don't know. But secondly, we also expect to get a product out of this process that is a tool that will help us identify our resources, deploy them better, and be able to track, I think it's called resource development, I don't recall the resource management, there it is. And so we're excited about this, and we're excited to get started as soon as possible.
One of the things I wanted to share with the committee members is that Arturo and I just discussed this yesterday, so he's had a whole, about 19, 20 hours to think about it, but that the first application of this initial RFP on lean processes could start with, the agency has been told it needs to, in HB1 anyway, reduce FTEs by 36.5 FTEs.
That's right.
Now, good news is that we were already volunteering to cut 15 because those are the long-term vacancies we've had, so that these processes can be used to streamline and figure out how do we get by with another 21 and a half fewer FTEs and still provide the same level of service and results by cutting out waste, et cetera. So that hopefully will continue to allow, as Arturo I think has said in the past, or said just a while ago, this agency to lead by example when it comes to what we're encouraging the institutions to do with the continuous improvement councils of their own, et cetera. So we're looking forward to that February kickoff.
Sure.
Ray, Mr. Chairman, to ask a question to the commissioner. You know, this 36 and a half people, I think that would indicate for someone on the outside is that we're not efficient now. I would suspect that you would not agree with that statement. And if that is the case, how are you going to get by with these other 16, 17, 18 people that you're not going to have to continue to provide that same level of service?
Well, the fact is we've been anticipating these budget cuts for quite some time. As you indicated in your comment, we've held positions open for quite some time. We have 20 positions that we haven't filled, so we only have 15 to go. Obviously, some of the cuts will be made in areas that have been zeroed out in the budget. If those cuts stand, we won't need staff to sustain the programs that have been eliminated. We will take a look at that. We will identify the most productive staff people in those areas and try to position them in other areas so that we maintain as many of our most productive staff as possible. But mostly we'll make the cuts in areas that have been either cut dramatically or totally eliminated.
More bricks, no straw, huh?
Well, it looks like we have neither one at this point.
It's the size of our staff. I just used my phone calculator. It's a little over 11.75% reduction in the allowed FTEs. But as Raymond said, nearly half, or a little over half of that is already vacant. 15 of those have been long-term vacancies. So really, in the world of lean process improvement, this has just been my experience with my company, it's very typical to set goals of 20% productivity gains. And so I don't feel the number is insurmountable as long as we take the right measured approach to it.
I don't either. I think the cuts, the proposed cuts are sustainable. We can do with them. We've identified areas where we can improve efficiency. So I think we'll be fine in terms of our overall FTE pattern.
Thank you.
No other questions?
Thank you. The last report that I have is item E. an update on the Jarvis Christian College audit report that was presented to this board, or to this committee, in October. At the request of one of your board members, one of your committee members, we bring him interim, I guess, update on this. If you recall, Jarvis Christian College, we identified some problems with their handling of financial aid programs. And so we've been working with them, and I want to emphasize that this report, this update I'm giving you, is not an official audit follow-up. We will do the official audit follow-up in a year, 1 year from the time that we release the audit report, and that is common to give the institutions enough time to implement the recommendations and improve their processes. However, and we expect that will be done sometime in October. However, we have been working with the staff at Jarvis Christian College, Jane Caldwell of our staff, along with Carol McDonald, and she's not here, but I rather want to thank her for her assistance. I have visited Jarvis, and they've met with their new vice president and their new for finance and their new financial aid director. They report that Jarvis Christian College has purchased a new system to handle their financial aid programs. They are working to make improvements. I personally talked to the president shortly, I can't remember if it was right before or right after the audit was released, and he personally gave me his assurance that they are committed to improving their operations. We plan to continue working with them. We offer our assistance, and we will keep communicating with them. And hopefully, our hopes are that when our internal auditors go back in October to do the official follow-up, that they will have a clean report that says that they have implemented all the recommendations. So that's the report. Be glad to answer any questions or have staff available in case there's any detailed information needed. But we're optimistic that they are on the right track.
Any questions? Stated earlier, none of these items require committee action. Moving on to agenda item 4A, consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee to approve a list of investment banking firms eligible to be selected to serve as underwriters in connection with any negotiated sale of the board's college student loan bonds. Our first item under agency operations is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee to approve a list of investment banking firms eligible to be selected to serve as underwriters in connection with any negotiated sale of the board's college student loan bonds. I'll call on Dr. Alonzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For this, we have 4 people that will come up and present this item and actually and answer any questions that you may have. I call on Assistant Commissioner Dan Weaver, Patrick Kershak, Lee, our financial advisor from First Southwest, and Tim from our bond counsel, who will present this item. And this staff recommended underwriting pool is also at your places as a one-page recommendation.
Right.
So I turn it over to the group here.
Sure. First Southwest Company, in the role as your financial advisor, worked with staff to develop a request for proposal, which we worked on during the latter part of 2010. Took through several refinements, including input from your general counsel and some other state agencies. Put together what we felt was a very, very good RFP. Put it out to a very broad group of potential respondents. Got back 22 responses to the RFP from both national and regional, and in, I guess by some definitions, state firms. Went through a very extensive review process of the responding firms. And I want to pause here a little bit and just set a little bit of context. The coordinating board can issue its student loan bonds by either negotiated or competitive sale, and
if you look back over the history of the program's debt issuance, it's been predominantly done through competitive bid issuance. That changed significantly with the market meltdown in late 2007, 2008. That really changed the environment within which you were issuing your debt, and others. Virtually all municipal debt issuers found themselves in a very, very different world during the last few years. And both in 2010 and 2009, you did issue on a negotiated basis. And that's kind of where we started this process, establishing a pool of qualified underwriters. And then once you made a decision with respect to any particular bond issue, then you were obligated to select from that pool if you were going to go negotiate it. And we did that very, very successfully in 2009 and 2010. Even though difficult and challenging markets, particularly in 2009 when you issued, we got a very competitive pricing bid, selected a team of underwriters and did an outstanding job, and you got all-in costs that were really much better than the general market results out there. Now, I don't know, coming into this next year, I'm sure a number of you are aware that the market is experiencing, the municipal market is experiencing considerable distress again for different reasons, but considerable distress, a lot of turmoil, a lot of headline risk in the municipal market. And it could be that you are going to need to resort to the negotiated sale approach again in 2011. We don't know yet, but back to where I started, what we're recommending to you here now, based on the responses to the RFP, is two pools, a pool of senior managers and a pool of co-managers. This distinction being, we're recommending that if you select a senior manager, it would be selected from the senior manager pool. A co-manager could come from either one of the firms in the senior manager pool or from the co-manager pool. But entities in the co-manager pool could not serve as a senior manager. They could only serve in a co-manager role. And the way we've in 2009 and 2010, one of the primary factors involved in making that final selection was we asked them to submit strictly an underwriting a fee proposal, underwriter's discount, and that was a big factor. As long as we felt the entities in the pool were still qualified and hadn't been impaired, then one of the big drivers in making the final selection was proposed underwriter fees, and that's worked out well. I'd be happy to answer any questions or any of the staff. The final selection for the pool was made on a joint basis by Arturo and staff and First Southwest Company.
Lee, can you remind me who we ended up with Wells last time?
The last issue,
Wachovia/Wells.
it was Wachovia/Wells.
For 2 issues, and RBC did our refunding last summer.
Correct. RBC was selected for the refunding, but the 2 prior were Wachovia/Wells, the 2 new money issues.
Can you just give us kind of, and I know this is the next approval item, but I mean, can you give us kind of an idea of, I mean, everybody is aware of what's going on in the municipal bond market, I'm sure, but, what's the pricing looking like right now?
Well, you've
Top obligation.
You've suffered
How would
two.
it compare to our new issue we did last year?
Yeah. 2 things. One, in 2009 and 2010, you may recall you enjoyed a 2-year hiatus from the alternative minimum tax. Student loan bonds fall in the private activity category and are subject to the alternative minimum tax, except the ARRA granted a 2-year holiday for private activity bonds. So in 2009 and 2010, you didn't have the additional burden of the alternative minimum tax. That was probably worth, in those markets, about 60 basis points Well, that holiday is over. Your next issuance will once again be subject to alternative minimum tax. So, and I'd say that 60 basis points is still there. It's somewhere 60 to 70 basis points impact that will have. Your interest, your all-in interest cost will probably go up by that much, strictly as a result of the alternative minimum tax. Secondly, beginning late in 2010, the municipal market started to show a lot of distress. Headline risk, sovereign debt in Europe kind of washed over into the U.S. municipal market. There's been a lot of headline risk. I don't know if any of you saw the Meredith Weather 60 Minutes segment.
Meredith Whitney. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Meredith Whitney, out trying to drum up business for her new firm, and there's a real drumbeat of concern out there about municipal bankruptcy. You will be, in a very significant way, somewhat sheltered from that with the state of Texas AAA, AA plus ratings. That Texas debt sells well. Secondly, I think, in a sense, the student loan part is a little bit of a negative, except that the coordinating board student loan program is a closed lien and has a good fund balance. It's a strong self-supporting program. So in addition to the state GO, you've got an underlying strong revenue stream to support that debt. That will somewhat mitigate the deterioration in the market. But to answer the question, the market deterioration from about a year ago to now, ignoring the AMT piece, which is 60 to 70 basis points, is probably another 80 to 90 basis points of market deterioration.
Can I chime in also, Mr. Ryder? Last summer when we refunded, we worked very diligently to take advantage of the AMT holiday. We accelerated some of our maturities to fill in some of the gaps in our debt service.
Yeah.
So now our debt service looking out through 2017 is fairly smooth. So we worked very hard with Lee and his group to fill in the gaps essentially and take advantage of the AMT holiday.
Relative to some of our peers who don't have the same shelter of a AAA rated state, what kind of spread differential are we looking at between?
I'm financial advisor to 8 student loan operations around the country, mostly state agency, some 501c3 not-for-profit operations that serve in lieu of a state agency like you have here. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients is a quasi, it's not a true state agency, but it's a quasi-governmental entity, creation of the state government without being a state agency. And they live in a state with comparatively more distressed economy and lower ratings for municipal issuers. They can't even issue in the arena where you issue, which is AAA level debt. They have to issue at the A-rated level for their alternative loan programs because they can't produce the collateral level that it would take to get to the AAA rating level. And their interest rate levels on their last deal, which was done at the end of 2010, to take advantage of the AMT holiday, were about 140 basis points above the levels you got on your last issue.
It's I forgot what it's called. Is it Chapter 9? Is that when it's the state filing or municipal filing? Or I know there's a lot of conversation about that potential occurrence. Is there anything that we can do or to add some added umbrella protection for our bond offerings?
I think you're probably doing everything you can. You're pretty unique in having the state GO on your debt. There's only one other state that has that. That makes it very special for your student loan program. The really strong fund balance. Also, over the last 5 to 10 years, you've significantly improved your underwriting criteria. You're bringing your defaults down. You've got good, strong underwriting criteria. I think the one area where, and staff is already aware of this, and that's to focus on disclosure, because you are a state-level issuer. You know, the state of New Jersey took a pretty good hard slap from the SEC over inadequate disclosure with respect to certain state-level financial obligations in the unfunded pension arena and some other areas. So you'll want to, because you are issuing as a state agency, you've really got to focus on your disclosure obligations, and that includes really disclosure across the whole spectrum of the state's financial situation. And V&E has already conducted a little workshop that I participated in with staff and general counsel, bringing people up to a heightened level of awareness of the greater regulatory scrutiny that's inevitably going to occur from the SEC and other regulators in the municipal finance arena.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
please.
So are these kind of a combination of a GO and a revenue bond?
Yes, if I could maybe try to answer that. The bond resolution that's in your next agenda caption largely tracks what your limitations are in statute and by the Constitution. Your bonds are secured by what's called an interest and sinking fund, and that interest and sinking fund is the fund into which every single dollar of your student loan repayments have to go into during the course of the fiscal year until you fill that bucket up to the point where you have enough money to pay debt service for the following fiscal year. And so that means on every September 1st, the first day of your state fiscal year, you start the year fully funded. And the constitutional provisions that authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds for these bonds provides a constitutional appropriation directing the comptroller that in the event there is not enough money in the interest and sinking fund at the beginning of the state fiscal year, there's appropriated out of the first monies from this not otherwise appropriated by the Constitution out of the state treasury into your interest and sinking fund to pay the bonds. So it is somewhat of a quasi-revenue obligation that's got the backstop of the state's general obligation pledge.
And one final comment on that. Your program goes way back to not long after the passage of the Higher Education Act, and in the entire history of your program, you have been 100% self-supporting. The program has handle all administrative expense and debt service, and there's never been a use of appropriated dollars on your debt service.
It certainly has the feel for being the most senior piece of securitized debt. I mean, I can't imagine there's anything better.
It's, as I said, I've FA'd 8 entities around the country. It's the strongest student loan backed debt in the nation.
That's good.
And the best rate in the nation also.
Correct. On the loans.
The best interest rate on the student loans that we make from the portfolio, we're at 6%, and I think the next closest is maybe 7.25%.
Yeah, it's right there somewhere. Lowest interest rate for an alternative loan program in the country.
So is V&E going to allow that to be in the offering statement?
I try to discourage that kind of puffery.
Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
I just want to make the point that the question comes up occasionally about whether the coordinating board should be in the loan business, and I would just underscore the point that Lee made. We really provide students a good deal, and that's our number one concern, to provide the best available loans to the relatively small number of students that we help out.
That's right. Okay. If there's no other questions, may I have a motion to approve the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee to approve a list of investment banking firms eligible to be selected to serve as underwriters in connection with any negotiated sale of the board's college student loan bonds?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Agenda item 4B, consideration of adopting the Commissioner. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
They're staying.
No, I just wanted to thank for that, though. Consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee regarding a resolution authorizing the issuance of State of Texas College student loan and refunding bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $190 million in one or more series, authorizing the Commissioner to approve all final terms of the bonds, approving the forms of an official statement, paying agent, registrar agreement, and escrow agreement, and resolving other matters related to the subject. So our next item is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee regarding resolution authorizing issuance of State of Texas College student loan and refunding bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $190 million in one or more series, authorizing the Commissioner to approve all final terms of the bonds, approving the forms of official statement, paying agent registrar agreement, and escrow agreement, and resolving other matters related to the subject. Repeat it.
Yes.
You gentlemen, could we have any questions for our panel here? Presentation.
If I could give a brief summary, to put this in context of this process of issuing bonds, last, I think it was April or July, at your board meeting, you adopted a resolution that authorized staff to go and seek private activity bond allocation from the Bond Review Board. To issue your bonds as tax exempt, you have to get private activity allocation through the state because your bonds benefit private party, the end user being the student. And since then, the board has submitted applications and obtained $125 million in private activity bond allocation from the Bond Review Board. The next step is what you just took in terms of approving a pool of underwriters. And this is kind of the final step in terms of your authorization. This bond resolution is substantially similar to last year's bond resolution with one noteworthy exception that I'll mention in a moment, but it authorizes general obligation bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $190 million. And of that $190 million, $125 of it can be new money bonds to make new loans to students, and the balance of that is for refunding bonds that are outstanding. That's about $65 million. And of that $65 million, about a little less than half of that is attributable to bonds that are going to mature after this calendar year, and your ability to refund those bonds is limited by this resolution to get present value savings. In other words, if you can't save money by refunding them, this resolution doesn't authorize it. About the other half of that $65 million in refunding candidates consists of current maturities or bonds that are going to mature in this year that you could refund in a manner that's going to create additional money in your loan funds to make even more student loans. So that's how the 190 breaks down. The resolution delegates authority to the Commissioner to determine the final terms of the bonds. It approves the forms of the paying agent agreement, escrow agreement, bond purchase agreement, and the form of the official statement that will be used to offer and sell the bonds, and delegates to certain staff members and the Commissioner the authority to make changes and finalize the terms of those documents. The one noteworthy change in terms of comparing this to last year's resolution is the provisions dealing with the manner of sale of your bonds. You have a statute in your enabling legislation that requires the board, this board being the governing body, to make the determination as to whether the bonds are going to be sold by competitive bid or by negotiated sale. And so the approach we've taken in the past was to make a determination now and reflected in the resolution based on discussion with staff and advice from First Southwest. But given all that has happened in the marketplace, staff and First Southwest pushed back on me like they normally do and asked, well, can we get flexibility and can we have the board delegate that to Commissioner or staff to make that determination. Your bonds have to be approved before they can be issued, must be approved by the Public Finance Division of the Attorney General's Office. And anytime we want to do something a little bit different, we always put a call into them and discuss through it and see if they'll allow it. And we did discuss it with them, and they did allow us to come up with a way to have this board delegate to the commissioner the authority to determine the manner of sale. And kind of the way it works is the resolution first requires, or is hardwired, if you will, to require the bonds to be sold by competitive bid. But if the commissioner receives written advice from First Southwest that you can obtain a lower true interest cost on your bonds by selling them by negotiated sale, then your bonds may be sold by negotiated sale. And so we were very happy to have the AG's office work with us on that. And in the event Lee does give the commissioner that advice, then Raymond has authority under this resolution to pick one or more investment banking firms from that pool in consultation with staff and First Southwest. So that's a summary, so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And just for the record, regardless, even in the circumstance that the board gives me the authority, if there's a question, I always consult with board leadership. I never make that decision unilaterally.
I think it's great having the flexibility, for sure.
Go ahead.
A quick question, Tim, and I think I know the answer to this, but because of our private activity allocation, is this the maximum we can go to the market with?
You have actually a state statute in your enabling legislation for your bond program that limits you to not issuing more than $125 million in new money bonds in any state fiscal year. And that's just new money, not a refunding piece.
And obviously the concern is I think there's going to be a much more heavy reliance on student loans as we look at what's happening in financial aid. And so I just want to make sure we've done all we can to maximize our issuance authority, especially in these, as we look out the next couple of years and what's the financial aid picture is going to look like.
One of the things that's in there, Tim talked about breaking it down in three pieces. $125 million new money, then there's 36.5 refunding that's driven by whether you can have a savings or not. But that last piece, that's current maturities. That's August 1 maturities. And you may or may not do that. You didn't do that last year. It's in here for the very reason you mentioned. What you can do by refunding a current maturity, obviously there's no debt service savings. You're refunding something that's maturing on August. But what you can do is push the maturity out and reuse the funds to make another cycle of loans. So it's a way to expand your lending capacity despite the $125 million new money limit. So that's in there for that reason in case you need it to expand lending.
I would just encourage the commissioner and the chair of the board and the chair of the committee to really be apprised of that as we get into that, just for the reason I so noted.
Yes.
There may be other roads, given the change in the landscape, that you're concerned could be explored.
Carol, Mr. Chairman. If I understood correctly, the 125's new money, you're moving the roughly $32 million. You do have the possibility of extending the maturity of that debt. And the other piece, was that a savings piece where we had bonds with a higher rate that could be refunded at a lower rate?
You only have one series of bonds right now. I believe it's your Series 2002 bonds that is callable within the next 12 months. And that is... it will be a determination of, I think, Lee advising staff of looking at what's the interest cost that you have right now on those 2002 bonds out in the future versus what can we get on them if we refunded them today in today's market. So the bond resolution limits this agency's ability to refund those bonds only to the extent that there is present value savings. So if you can't save money, obviously it doesn't make sense to go out and refund them.
Okay. So if that callability, is that something that's just a market function to be able to market the bonds?
You've generally structured your bonds with a 10-year call in them, and the 2000 issue is coming up on its 10-year call. So we'll be running you can't do that. Private activity bonds cannot be refunded more than 90 days prior to their maturity or call date, which is August 1. So you couldn't execute that refunding more than 90 days prior to August 1. We'll be starting the refunding analysis on that pretty quickly to see if there's any debt service savings there. Can you save in this market? And it's going to be tough in this market. I don't know what the analysis is going to say. Now, so that one's being driven by debt service savings. Can we call it in and refund it back out at a lower interest rate? But the August 1 maturities, there you're looking strict, there is no debt service savings. The choice is, do I pay them off here on August 1, or do I refund them and extend them out so I can use the money one more cycle of lending?
Okay. And it doesn't count against our debt capacity, our authorized debt capacity of $400 million. The current maturities we can refund without tapping into that $400 million capacity.
And as bond counsel, Bill, do you handle as general counsel reviewing these documents, or?
The bond documents are put together by bond counsel. I look at them, but I will defer to bond counsel. I may have from time to time a question, and then I give it to bond counsel if they are able to resolve it.
But have you reviewed these at this point?
I have.
And you don't have any problem with it?
No, sir. I didn't even have questions on that side.
Lee, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Go ahead. It's your meeting.
Please go.
Well, I just want to comment something Mr. Ryder said earlier. When we issued $125 million last year, we saw the AMT perhaps going away, so we essentially got as much money as we could last year. We're in a pretty strong cash position right now. We have cash in the top fund that we've not been using to make loans. It's available to make loans. So we have a fairly substantial amount of resources that are available, depending on how the session might go, to put us in a position where we can make up some of the gap, should there be a gap in student funding. So we've been kind of plodding along, expecting to have additional capacity, and this is something that's been kind of in the work for many years. Well, not many, a number of years.
Lee, just real quickly, once you do the analysis on whether or not it's profitable for us to refund on that portion, I mean, that's kind of a rolling thing. You can keep us up to date on it frequently, and we have plenty of visibility on.
Absolutely. What we'll do, we'll probably do the initial refunding analysis within the next few weeks. And then we'll update that with any change in the market so that we're constantly watching it to see if we can get better debt service savings or get within the statutory requirements.
And just so I'm trying to understand, once if we see a window where it's profitable, you have how long does that window need to remain open for us to actually execute?
Well, you're in approving this resolution. That's essentially a final resolution. We included in the package our near final preliminary official statement and escrow agreement. So if we saw a market opportunity with as far advanced as the documents are, we could select an underwriter and get into the market very quickly. We could pull the trigger within a matter of weeks if we needed to.
However.
No, not however, but the resolution, this authority expires on December 31st of this calendar year. So, and that's kind of the general status quo and what the Attorney General's office will allow in terms of the duration of a governing body's authorization for issuance of public securities.
And however, we'll carry a pretty substantial negative arbitrage for a number of months if we issue too early. You have to look at when you're actually going to use the funds.
And we take that into account in our recommendation, too. Not only the raw refunding results, but as Dan said, the reinvestment rate is, under current market conditions, very bad. So we take that into account, too.
Any other questions?
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
Sir. We have folks probably listening next door in the loan program operations. We actually exceeded $1 billion portfolio balance at the beginning of this month when we made our spring disbursements. So it was a kind of a hoorah kind of a day in the loan program. So congratulations, folks.
Mr. Chair, I just had one last question. In selection of the senior managers, is that on a rotating basis or just who is best in the market at the time?
It's for that one transaction only. It's not, they're not guaranteed anything other than the one transaction that they're being picked for. And there'd be a couple things. We'd probably do the repricing again to get new updated underwriter and discount bids, cost bids. And then we'd also, First South West would advise staff and the commissioner as to whether, who's showing some problems in their underwritings. Is anybody in the pool no longer really probably fully qualified to serve because of financial problems or headline risk or whatever.
Elaine, did I see you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much. May I have a motion to approve Commissioner's recommendation to the committee regarding a resolution authorizing the issuance of State of Texas College student loan and refunding bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $190 million in one or more series, authorizing the Commissioner to approve all final terms of the bonds, approving the forms of an official statement, paying agent registrar agreement and escrow agreement, and resolving other matters related to the subject. Have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. Can I ask one more question, just to Tim or Lee? And I know that we got some more correspondence. Are we clear now that under Dodd-Frank we're not municipal advisors? I mean, we've gotten a lot of correspondence on that, and that causes me some angst. Because I don't want to have to be registered as a municipal advisor. But have we got any further clarification on that? I know we got this piece from you, Bill.
I'm glad you asked the question.
No, it's still in the comment period, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So, but you are correct, and it is a possibility that the SEC could, in their final rulemaking, could impose a municipal advisor registration requirement so broad that would pick up, as the proposed rule does, appointed board members of governmental entities that are not elected.
I know you know
That is
you will begin to lose board members very quickly.
And we face this problem nationwide. The SEC is being bombarded with letters of protest on that particular period. It's insane.
Well, hopefully the same phenomenon will happen when the legislature charged us with creating a uniform grade point average for high schools. And it'll go up in a cloud of smoke quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Glad I missed that.
Oh, you are so lucky.
Agenda item 4C is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee regarding a request for approval to issue request for proposal, an RFP to contract for temporary employee services for fiscal year 2012. This item will be presented by Dr. Alonzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, as you read, permission to issue the RFP. The agency has traditionally contracted with a temp services agency to provide temporary help to augment vacancies and peak workloads in the agency. This past 2 years, we were able to quickly staff up for not only our peak periods and our vacancies, but we had the unique opportunity to staff up for the ARA program using a model that has worked quite well, where we have 2 full-time employees and running the program, and the rest were temporary temporary employees. We ask that you grant us permission to go out on RFP. Then we will enter into a one-year contract, and then the way that we have proposed and we are recommending is that the RFP is worded in such a way that we have the option to renew for 2 additional one-year periods. And so we request your approval for this RFP.
So moved.
Second. I think we had one question. Did you have?
I had some questions that, before the committee votes, if I might. Well, first a question. Arturo, and I probably asked this before, just don't remember the answer, but do these temporary employees count against our FTEs?
They only count if they are employed for a continuous period of more than 6 months.
6 months or more. Okay.
6 months or more, right.
All right. So one of my concerns with the automatic 2-year renewal period is that it, for lack of a better way to put it, it sort of gives us a relief valve, which is part of the intention, but does it, my concern is that it takes some of the pressure or onus off of us to gain greater efficiencies and being able to do what we do with a smaller staff as we experience attrition over time.
I ponder this, Fred. I don't think it does. I mean, I really don't. I think that we are going to do everything that we can, and I pledge to you that, implement the lean processes. I look at it as giving us the flexibility. But, I mean, if it's a 1-year period and then we come to you next January and the following January, that's fine. It was just that it gave us that flexibility. For example, when we got those ARA funds in August of 2009, that we were able to execute the contract and not wait till October to come back for another RFP and another contract. And it's just a flexibility that that we will use wisely. And that's all.
And that's a great example. The ARA responsibility that we were, pitched the ball and we were the trailing tailback and didn't realize we were going to be the option. But if something like that were to happen in the session, we would still have a 1-year contract. Granted that if it didn't have the option, then we would have to have the discussion again next January.
Right. And the other thing that, and it's all tied to what you're asking here, is that with the reductions of the FTEs that we talked earlier, I've got some figures. Wallace had asked me to put together to have some figures. We've been averaging about $206,000 non-ARA expenditures per year on just regular temp services. And so, we don't know, and we hope that this 36.5 reduction of FTEs is a top number, but that gives me a little concern that we may need to react again quickly if we were to get something that after our cap was reduced. So it's a lot of unknowns, and so that's why. But we can go either way. It's just that I'd like to have that flexibility if it's the wish of the committee.
Well, I think I'm just trying to strike the right balance, because I think the flexibility is important. These, whether some people might call them unfunded mandates, others would call them very necessary but surprise programs. They happen, and we need to be prepared for them. On the other hand, the committee and the board, when we tend to approve options, it sort of goes sight unseen, and then it's going to be potentially 3 years before we see it again. And so I worry about mainly about the board members having their eyes on what our real staffing and overhead is. And it's good to know we've been averaging, when you set the ARA aside, $206,000 a year. That puts it in context.
Right, and it's also, just as I think this is important to note, that when the contract is actually executed, it is up to a certain amount, not to exceed that amount, but there are no guarantees. So in other words, we only use whatever we need.
Right.
And then we have the authority. So as you can see, we've used it, in my estimation, in a very prudent manner. But, we can handle it either way, right? I mean,
I would just ask, one suggestion I might make, and I don't see this as an urgent concern or anything, but perhaps the happy medium would be to approve an option to extend one additional year rather than two, so that gives you flexibility, but it comes back earlier to the board in terms of knowing where we are and over the course of the next 2 years, what happens with our full-time and our temporary staffing and costs. So I throw that out there just for the consideration of the commission.
I just think you have to move it up earlier in an agenda item to get it before the board is all you got to do. It'll be back in here sooner. I think it's a good suggestion.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the chairman, I'll amend my motion to reflect that.
So we would
Extend
actually...
it for 1 year with a 1 year
One
extension instead of one year with two 1 year options. It's one 1 year option. Is that what you were recommending, Fred?
That was my friendly suggestion.
So moved.
So moved. One more quick question before Whit hopefully seconds it, is what is the average duration of a temporary employee?
I had that. I'm not sure. I don't think we have an average duration
5
because
months and 29 days.
Right. It's one of those things. As long as it's that 6 month, it's a self.
Carrie, do we have that? I don't think we.
Are we managing to that?
We don't manage it that way, because it's as needed. And we actually have some people that, for whatever reason, are here more than 6 months, and we have to count them against the FTE cap. So I guess the answer to that, Wallace, is that whatever is needed, but certainly.
Do we know what the average cost per hour is, or cost per year is for a temp?
Well, we had a graduate on the current contract. We have a graduated salary, depending on what we're asking them for. If you recall, the last time that we brought this to the committee, Brenda asked us to make sure that we got prices for different skills and different. So it just depends on some are more costly than others. I don't have the figures in front of me, Fred. But when the RFP or when the proposals come back, we certainly will disclose that for approval to the chair and vice chair.
I mean, $206,000 is not a lot. If it's $20 an hour, that's a little over 10,000 hours. That's less than 5 full-time equivalents. If they were here all year, it's probably more like 20 people that are here for 3 months or whatever.
Yeah, we did get that. I think at any one time we have 10 people, but that's just an average. 10 a week.
Bill, do I need?
Not every week.
Can you tell me how we need to rephrase this?
I was going to ask a question, if I may, and it simply is, if you go from a potential 3-year contract to a 2-year contract, do you wish to change the amount of money available? And the reason I ask that is twofold. One, because it's an obvious question, 2 versus 3. 2, if it is $750,000 or less, you can approve that under our rules today without it having to go to the board tomorrow. So that's the reason I raised that.
Talk about your win-wins.
And we just pulled the agenda from tomorrow's, I think it's on the consent calendar.
If it is 750 or less, for a maximum.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So should the number be 750 then?
Not to exceed 750.
Actually.
That's,
in that 2-year period.
I think that's fine. Whatever, yeah. What is that? Are y'all
It's fine with me.
So do we need to rephrase this and read it into the record, or have we got it covered for his motion?
It might be wise to rephrase it following the outline that you have in front of you, but changing it from one-year contract to two possible, I don't have it in front of me, one-year extensions to a potential extension to the next succeeding year with a minimum amount, or I guess you don't need a minimum, you just need a maximum amount.
Maximum of 750, right.
Okay. Okay, so, right, so may I have a motion, would be consideration of, where are we here?
That will be that.
Consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee regarding a request for approval to issue a request for proposals to contract for temporary employee services for fiscal 2012 with an option to extend for one fiscal year in one-year increments in a total amount that may not exceed $750,000.
That does it.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Bill.
Yes, sir.
On to auditing, 5A. Agenda item 5A is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the Committee for approval of revisions to the internal audit charter. To present this item, I'll call Mr. Tony Tigby. Well, Tony, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Our first item, 5A, is the approval of revisions to our internal auditing charter. We are requesting your approval of revisions to the internal auditing charter. The revisions to the charter are as a result of the new standard that were issued last year by the Institute of Internal Auditors. We have incorporated the revisions into the charter that was approved in January 2010, and we request your approval in order that our charter is going to be in line in compliance with the standards.
Are there any questions for Tony? Okay. If there's no questions, may I have a motion of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to approve the revisions to the internal audit charter?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Great. 5B? Tony?
Item 5B is the internal report on the audit of financial aid at the Texas State University, San Marcos. We concluded that the university comply with all applicable coordinating board rules and regulations in the issuance of financial aid for fiscal year 2009. That's all we have, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, no questions, Tony?
No more. The item 5B2, this is on the audit of financial aid at the San Antonio College campus of Alamo Community College District. Our conclusion also was that the college comply with all relevant coordinating board rules and regulations for award of financial aids during fiscal year 2009.
No questions, Harold? Keep going, Tony. On a roll.
Then item 5B3, this is a follow-up audit on professional nursing shortage reduction program. We concluded that management has implemented the two outstanding recommendations in our audit report dated October 22, 2008. That's all.
Okay. Questions? Okay.
Item 5.4b is the report on the audit of this system development life cycle process. We concluded that there were adequate internal controls in the system development life cycle process to support the business needs of the agency. But there are 3 areas that we issued some recommendations, and I'm happy to report that the management has started to implement them.
Terrific. Any questions? Last one, 5D5.
The last one is the status of the internal audit work plan for fiscal year 2001. We are on track in implementing the internal audit work plan. The only project that we carried over from 2010, where we've exceeded our budgeted hours, is the audit of the Texas Educational Opportunity Grant. And the reason for the variance is because we came across some issues that we did not anticipate. But the audit is still going on, and we should be able to bring the report to you in April. So that is the only area.
Not being an auditor, when you run into something you didn't anticipate, what does that look like typically?
What looks like is you will have to identify that issue. Is it a significant? If it is significant, you try to go ahead and resolve it. If it's not significant, then you will just have to drop it. But in this case, the issues involved was going back and forth with the grant area and the schools involved. So that is why we could. And there was some monies involved, and we have been able to get some back. So that is why we could not just.
So I want to make sure, because I kind of go back to our Texas grant deal at Jarvis Christian College, and TELG is going with the community colleges. I mean, I know you're not prepared to present the audit results to us today, but is there anything as a committee that causes you concern that we should know? I mean, financial aid to me is close to our heart right now, so we want to be really sensitive that we understand if there's any concerns on the part of the auditing staff as it relates to funds going to community colleges right now. So I'm not asking you to give me an audit report, I'm just asking you to tell me, is there anything that we should have a heads up on today?
There isn't anything that will sort of cause sleepless nights, other than we need to improve our monitoring process, and which is why we are doing this audit. But it's not that we did not come across anything like misappropriation or funds. No, it's just that we need to increase our oversight. That's it.
Mr. Chairman. This last page here, the work plan status report.
Yes, sir.
Can you kind of tell me what that means and how? I mean, I'm sitting here looking at there's budgeted hours of 6,176, actual hours expended 1,318. Is the 1,318 for the period September 1st through November 30th, and then you will continue to go against the 6,176? Is that how?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And the first group, which is the institutional audit, we have budgeted the total of 3,460, and we spend 1,010 hours, and then we broke them down in groups.
Okay.
And for agency operations, we budgeted 1720, and we spent 31 at the end of September, and so on.
I'm kind of the new kid on the block here. Can you tell me what a risk assessment score is and what it means and how you use it?
The risk assessment score is the scores that we came by with as a result of our risk assessment processes, wherein we identified all the auditable units in the whole agency, and then we went through the proper process of ranking them according to some risk factors, and then score them. Basically, if the score is high, it means there's a potential risk there. If it is low, then it means you don't have a lot of risk there.
So in this particular thing, just as an example, the formula funding or educational research center in the 63, 64 would be a lower risk factor than, say, the audit follow-up or whatever.
Yes, sir. It will be a good assumption.
And that would also indicate how much time you spend in those areas based on that score?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I understand.
Mr. Chairman, a couple follow-ups. Tony, I think I know the answer to this, but if the status column is left blank on a given project, does that tell us that project simply hasn't been started yet?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I thought. Could we, one thing that might help, I'm going to make a suggestion here, is in the future, on those projects I think there are 3 or 4 that are in progress.
Yes, sir.
It would be helpful to us if we could have, rather than just in progress, sort of a % complete
status
figure.
Okay.
Even if it's just estimated.
Okay, I do that.
So we know if you're halfway through, 75%, 25%, barely started, whatever it is.
We do that. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tony? This item is a reporting item only. It does not require committee action. We don't have to have a vote. So thank you, Tony. Appreciate it very much. This concludes the Committee on Agency Operations meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Arturo, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Raymond, thank you. And thank you.